In this video, I'll be providing a project status update on this 1988 Porsche 944 and a breakdown of the maintenance and repairs performed during my third year of ownership, along with their associated costs. After completing some significant restoration on the car in year 2, which included new connecting rod bearings and an oil pan gasket, a front strut conversion to some Koni Sport adjustable shocks, all new vacuum lines, and a complete brake system refurbishment, just to name a few items, I was feeling pretty good about the progress made to date, but like any 30-year-old project car, there were some additional surprises in store for year 3. I decided to start out the year by adding an only 944 short shifter to eliminate some loose play in the linkage and improve the overall shifting response. While I was completing this work on the Transaxle, I also replaced the shift rod seal that was leaking, the retaining plate paper gasket, and the detent seal. This turned out to be a fun upgrade to the car, with parts totaling only $136. Not long after, however, I began to notice some white exhaust smoke at cold start and a small loss in power when driving the car, so I decided to perform a cylinder compression test on the engine, the results of which returned only 30 psi on cylinder 4, while cylinders 1 through 3 were in the 145 psi range. With signs pointing towards a head gasket failure and or a valve sealing issue, I began tearing down the engine for a top-end rebuild. For the cylinder head refurbishment, I added new turbo valve springs for $130, valve guides for $40, valve stem seals, and 2 new core plugs. Machine shop costs totaled $380, which included head resurfacing, freshly cut valve seats and lapped valves, and the new valve seat pressure tested at 120 pounds. With the head rebuild and an extensive list of necessary and some unnecessary parts on hand, I was prepared to reassemble the engine, but with everything already broken down, it seemed like the perfect time to do an overall engine bay refresh. So I had the intake manifold and camshaft housing bead blasted for $120 and powder coated in satin clear for $160. I also had all the rusted steel parts and hardware cleaned and yellow zinc plated by a local metal plating company for $100, which really helped bring back the fresh factory appearance to the engine bay. After the cleaning, the powder coating, metal plating, and adding in some replacement clamps and bolts, the parts refresh came to $650. At this point, things were looking super clean and shiny, with the exception of the aging coolant expansion tank that now looked out of place amongst the other rejuvenated parts, so I decided to refresh the coolant system as well with a new reservoir for $240, all new heater hoses for about $50, a heater control valve for $28, and a new return pipe for $96. Parts for the coolant system refresh totaled $425, and the new plastic expansion tank really improved the appearance. On the other side of the engine, I replaced the cracking stainless steel exhaust manifold with an earlier cast iron version I picked up for $50, and since the manifolds tend to oxidize quickly even after being cleaned, I elected to coat it with some POR 15 manifold gray high temperature paint to preserve its condition. Costs for the exhaust manifold parts, cleaning, and coating came to $182. To complete the head gasket repair, I picked up a Victor Reinz head gasket kit for about $90, which included all the necessary seals to reassemble the top half of the engine. I added in new cylinder head nuts and washers for $40, camshaft housing bolt plugs for $22, new timing and balance shaft belt rollers, a distributor dust shield, inspection hole plug, ignition rotor, 2 pre-owned hydraulic valve tappets to replace some that had gone soft, Bosch 7900 spark plugs, an LX63 air filter, 2 gallons of coolant, and some various hardware. Since the fuel injectors were out of the car for about a month during the process, I sent them off to RC Fuel Injection for a cleaning service that cost $115. This ended up paying off because during the initial testing, 2 of the injectors were found to be leaking and had a poor flow rate. All said and done, the parts for the head gasket repair came to $588. Everything went smoothly during the rebuild process, and all the restored parts had the engine bay looking nice and clean. I was ready to fire it up and take the car out for a drive, but my excitement was met with an engine misfire on cylinder number 2, the cause of which turned out to be a seized fuel injector. I'm not sure if some debris had gotten down inside during installation or what happened, but RC performed a second cleaning on the entire set, and that resolved the issue straight away. With the refurbished cylinder head, the new head gasket, and everything reassembled, the engine was running strong, smoke-free, and compression test results were consistent across all 4 cylinders. While I was working on the car, I noticed that the alternator bearing was making some excessive noise when I spun the fan blade, and because output seemed a little low when operating some of the electrical accessories on the car, I added in an alternator replacement to the repair list during the first half of the year. I was able to pick up a nice remanufactured Bosch AL170X unit for about $200, and at the same time I replaced the flexible ventilation hose with 2 new hose clamps for $30. After the upgrade, the voltage reading on the dash was a bit higher, and there was a noticeable improvement in the side window movement speed up and down when the car was running, not to mention that the rebuilt unit was much quieter. Moving into the second half of the year, I decided to replace the Transaxle gear oil for the second time under my ownership because the fluid that came out during the first change was looking pretty rough. I ended up switching to Redline MT90, which is a 75W90 GL4 oil. The Porsche factory workshop manual calls for a GL5 oil in this application, but I wanted to avoid that given the documented corrosive effects that GL5 has on brass and bronze synchros. After the second oil change, there was a perceptible difference in the noise level at the Transaxle, as well as in the smoothness of gear changes, and the 3 quarts of fluid only cost $53. Around this time, I began to address a delayed start issue where the engine would occasionally turn over slowly and require a few extra revolutions to start the car. To address the problem, I replaced the 8-year-old battery with a stronger 96R type battery for $185, which added about 100 cold cranking amps over the previously installed unit. I also picked up a high torque starter by IMI Performance for $280 to replace the aging and oxidized OEM starter in the car, and I added in a solid state DMA relay with Pump Prime feature by Focus 9 Technologies just to ensure adequate fuel pressure during startup. The combination of upgrades provided the quicker and quieter starting performance I was looking for, and the total cost of this repair came to $502. As year 3 was coming to a close, I was running out of broken things to fix on the car, so I chose to tackle the non-functioning factory alarm system. While my primary concern was that the alarm keys weren't included when I purchased the car, as I was looking things over, I also found that the alarm relay was missing and that the control module was bypassed, so its functional condition was unknown. After rekeying the alarm switch to match the ignition key, replacing the alarm relay with a new old stock unit I bought for $47, and testing the system, I found it to be mostly functional, but that the horn wasn't working. As it turned out, the alarm horn was fried, and its failure had damaged a section on the circuit board inside the control unit, so I picked up a used horn for $14, completed a trace repair on the board, and got the system working again for a total parts cost of $71. This completed the mechanical repair and maintenance items for year 3, which came to a total of $3,654.82. In addition to these mechanical items, I completed some work on the interior and exterior of the car as well. As for the exterior, having previously replaced the sunroof seal, the quarter window seals, and the lower side window moldings, it was time to replace the rear hatch seal and the cargo area that was compressed, dry, and cracking in some areas. After removing the old seal and cleaning up the surrounding body panels, I installed an aftermarket Euro seal for $44. A new hatch seal can reduce road noise and exhaust fumes entering the cabin, so it was nice to get that done. About 3 months later, I replaced the left rear bumper cover on the car that had some paint damage with a used part I picked up for $43 and had repainted in the factory Zermatt silver color for $180. Exterior repair costs for year 3 totaled $266.34. For the interior of the car, I completed some work on the sunroof latches as well as some leather seat restoration. It's relatively common for the plastic hinge pieces inside the sunroof latches to crack and break over time, resulting in a loose latching mechanism. However, they aren't very expensive to replace, as I picked up a new hinge for under $8. Replacement involves unscrewing the affected latch from the sunroof panel and removing the metal spring pin. After placing the new hinge on the end of the latch, the pin can be pressed back into place. In this case, the fitment was a bit tight, so I lightly passed a drill bit through the new hinge to remove some material and ended up with a perfect fit. As for the leather seats, I applied a leather reconditioning and recoloring kit to restore some faded areas, most notably on the driver's side left seat bolster for $65, and I restitched the front seam sections on the passenger seat using Tex 90 nylon thread to repair the broken seams there for $10. During this repair, I found 51 cents under the passenger seat, and one of the quarters was dated 1988, the same year as the car, so that one was a keeper. Interior repair costs for year 3 came to a total of $107.93. When time came to renew my vehicle plate and registration for the year, I opted for North Carolina's antique auto plate. There was a change in state law in 2019 that reduced the vehicle age requirement from 35 years old down to 30 years old, and while there's an additional $10 fee for the antique plate, it limits the vehicle tax value to a maximum of $500, so I ended up saving some money on state taxes while adding a bit of novelty to this vintage 944. It's a little odd thinking of a car from 1988 as being antique at this point, but the new license plate is pretty unique. As fall rolled into winter, things were shaping up to be another successful year of restoration on the car, and while I was only able to drive it a total of 281 miles during that time, significant progress was made on improving its overall appearance and reliability. Unfortunately, I hit a major setback as the year came to a close when the car ended up in a ditch while avoiding a deer in the roadway, causing damage to the lower front end, something that I'll be working to repair in year 4. So here's a breakdown of costs for the year. The initial vehicle and first 2 years' expenses came to $12,456.85. Mechanical repairs for year 3 came to $3,655. And the exterior and interior expenses were $266 and $108 respectively, for a total parts cost of just over $4,029, making the grand total investment to date $16,485.94. And that concludes the review of the project log for year 3 on this 1988 Porsche 944.